Bryce Kane, a 41-year-old finance CEO in Dallas, built empires with numbers, yet lived alone in a world of glass and silence. His success was spotless. His heart, anything but. One rainy afternoon, he visited a crowded shelter to review a tax write-off. But just as he turned to leave, a small voice stopped him cold. "Daddy?" Bryce froze. At a folding table, an 8-year-old girl with messy braids and shy eyes held out a bracelet of beads. Her name was Mia. She said her mom's name was Lauren, the woman Bryce once loved, the one he thought had vanished a decade ago. 1,000 questions flooded him. Was it possible? Could this quiet child really be his daughter? As he buys every bracelet Mia offers, Bryce begins to unravel a heartbreaking lie. His own father once told Lauren he never wanted a family, a forged email, a betrayal that cost him everything. Now, Bryce must confront the truth and the man who stole his chance at love and fatherhood. Will he repair what was broken, or is it too late to build the family he never knew he had? And what will one little bracelet reveal about everything he's lost? Subscribe to see this heartfelt story unfold, where love, lies, and second chances are woven into every thread. The lobby of Kane Financial glittered with steel and sunlight. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of downtown Dallas, a city that pulsed with ambition, just like Bryce Kane. At 41, he was the architect of billion-dollar deals, the strategist behind mergers that shook markets. And yet, as he stared at the stock ticker rolling silently across the wall, his heart felt strangely vacant. "Sir, your noon meeting at the shelter is confirmed," his assistant said, tapping on a tablet. Bryce nodded, not fully hearing her. He only agreed to the visit because it was good optics, a PR move to showcase corporate compassion. Minutes later, his black SUV glided through the edge of South Dallas. Brick buildings, weather-worn signs, and flickering neon formed a world far from his usual marble conference tables. The shelter was tucked between a pawn shop and an empty lot, buzzing with families, staff, and laughter that sounded like hope stretched thin. Inside, the air smelled faintly of crayons and cafeteria chili. A makeshift craft corner sat near the entrance, construction paper, yarn, and beads strewn across a plastic table. That's when he saw her. A little girl, 8, maybe 9. Sitting cross-legged on a rug, stringing tiny beads with focused fingers. Her dark hair was tied in a lopsided braid, her shirt slightly oversized. She looked up. And then it happened. "Daddy?" The word landed like a lightning bolt. Bryce froze mid-step. The room seemed to vanish, sound collapsing into a ringing in his ears. He turned, certain she'd been talking to someone else, but no, her gaze was fixed on him, wide-eyed and searching. "I'm sorry," he said awkwardly. "I think you're mistaken." The girl blinked, then looked down quickly, her hands fumbling over the bracelet. I'm sorry. I thought... Never mind." Something about her voice lodged in his chest. It wasn't just the word, "Daddy." It was the tremble behind it. The same tremble Lauren used to have when she was scared but pretending to be strong. Bryce took a shaky breath and walked closer. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Yeah, that's a pretty name. You make these?" He pointed at the small beaded creations lined up beside her. She nodded. "For the shelter's craft table. We sell them at the market sometimes." He picked up one. The colors were bright, sky blue, lemon yellow, and a single red bead at the center. Delicate, precise, the kind of detail someone would only learn from someone who cared deeply. "How much?" She shrugged. "Whatever people want to pay." He pulled out a crisp $100 bill and laid it on the table. Her eyes widened. That's too much. I don't think it is, Bryce said, pocketing the bracelet like it was fragile glass. It's beautiful work. Across the room, a counselor waved at him. Mr. Kane, we're ready for your tour. But Bryce barely moved. Your mom, what's her name? He asked quietly. He hesitated. Lauren. He dropped the bracelet. The name hit harder than the word daddy. Lauren. The woman he'd loved fiercely in college. The one he left when his father, Harold, claimed she was chasing his money. He never heard from her again. Just an email one night, cold and final. Don't contact me. It's over. Bryce had accepted it. Or tried to. But now, a little girl with her eyes was sitting in a Dallas shelter calling him Daddy. Where is she? He asked, voice raw. She's at work, Mia said. She cleans offices downtown. Sometimes late. Bryce knelt. Mia, do you know your dad? She looked away. Mom says he didn't want to stay. The words stung more than he expected. Who told her that? Mia shrugged again. Grandpa Harold, I think. Mom doesn't like him. Bryce's blood ran cold. His father, the man who once warned him that Lauren would destroy his future. The same man who controlled his inbox during the merger 10 years ago. As he stood, Bryce's whole world tilted. In his hand, the beaded bracelet felt heavier than any asset he'd ever held. It wasn't just decoration. It was a thread that might lead him back to everything he never knew he lost. The bracelet stayed in Bryce's pocket the whole drive back. He didn't speak, didn't check his phone. The weight of Mia's eyes, her voice calling him Daddy, clung to him like humidity. Back inside Kane Financial's glass tower, everything felt colder than usual. His private office overlooked the skyline, a fortress of power, but today even the view felt distant. He sat behind his sleek walnut desk, fingers resting on the bracelet. Sky blue, lemon yellow, one red bead in the middle, just like her. He whispered, Mia. The name cracked something inside. A knock broke the silence. His assistant peeked in. Your father called. Twice. Bryce clenched his jaw. Tell him I'm in meetings all day. She nodded and left. He opened his laptop and began digging. Old emails, calendar archives, the spring 10 years ago when Lauren vanished. He found the email, the one that ended it all. I'm done, Bryce. Don't contact me again. But it didn't sound like her. She would have yelled, called, slammed a door. Not this, not silence wrapped in punctuation. He hovered over the metadata. The message had been forwarded through his father's assistant's address. Strange. He picked up the bracelet again, letting the beads roll between his fingers like a rosary. Something wasn't right. Hours later, Bryce stood on the corner of Maple and 10th in front of a cleaning service downtown. The windows were fogged with steam, but he saw her through the glass. Lauren. She wore a navy work shirt, her hair in a tight bun. Her face older, sharper, more tired than he remembered. She scrubbed at a microwave inside a corporate break room like she was trying to erase more than stains. He didn't move, just watched. Then her eyes lifted and locked onto his. She froze. Her expression flickered, then hardened. Bryce stepped inside. Lauren, he said, barely above a whisper. She didn't respond, just kept wiping. I saw her, he said, Mia, at the shelter. At that, she finally turned, her mouth tightened. She's not part of your world. She called me Daddy. Lauren's eyes glistened. She thought you were someone else. No, she said your name. Silence. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Lauren put the sponge down, shoulders tense. Because your father told me not to. That hit him like a slap. What? She crossed her arms. Harold. He came to see me. Said you were focused on building your empire. Said you didn't want a family. Then I got that email." Bryce shook his head. "That email didn't come from me." Lauren scoffed. "I figured that out too late." "I would have stayed," he said, voice raw. "I loved you. You loved what we had, not what came after. I didn't even know there was an after." She leaned on the counter. "Well, now you do. And she's mine. She knows one world. It's not yours." Bryce looked down. "She deserves more than beating bracelets to survive. She doesn't need your money. I'm not here for guilt. I'm here because I want to know her. I want to know you." Lauren's voice cracked. "Don't make promises you won't keep." He reached into his pocket and placed the bracelet on the counter. "She gave me this. I didn't earn it, but I want to." A long silence passed. "She wears red in the middle of every bracelet," Lauren said quietly. "It means hope. She started doing it after her 6th birthday, when she asked why her dad never came." Bryce's breath caught. "I want to be in her life," he said. "Whatever it takes." Lauren stared at him. "Then start with trust. Earn it." He nodded slowly. "I will." She picked up the bracelet, ran her fingers over the red bead. Then she said softly, "Come by the market Saturday. She'll be selling. Start there." Bryce swallowed hard. "I will." And this time he meant it. Saturday morning rose warm and bright over the Dallas craft market, rows of vendor tents fluttering gently in the breeze. Bryce walked slowly, deliberately, his expensive loafers crunching on gravel, drawing glances that he ignored. Colorful booths lined the sidewalks, handmade soaps, candles, painted mugs. But one table stood out, a simple folding table draped in a white cloth with rows of beaded bracelets laid out like tiny rainbows. And behind them, Mia. She wore a yellow sundress and a jean jacket, her braid neater this time, but her shy eyes the same. She glanced up as he approached. "You came," she whispered. Bryce smiled. "I said I would." Mia looked down, hands fiddling with a half-finished bracelet. "I made new ones this week." "I can see that," he said, leaning down. "They're beautiful." She held one up. Blue, green, red center. "This one's for someone brave. Can I buy it?" She paused, then shook her head. "You don't have to pay." "I want to." He placed a 20 gently on the table. She slid the bracelet toward him without another word. From behind, Lauren watched the exchange. She stood at a nearby booth pretending to rearrange books, but her eyes rarely left her daughter. Later, when the crowd thinned, Bryce knelt beside Mia's chair. "Do you like making these?" She nodded. "It helps when I miss stuff." "Stuff like what?" "People," she said softly. "Memories. My teacher said creating things can hold feelings." He swallowed the lump in his throat. "That's smart." She glanced sideways. "Do you remember my mom?" "I do," he said. "Every day." Mia's fingers stopped moving. "She said you were brave once, that you wanted big things, but you had to choose." He looked at her carefully. "She told you that?" "Only when I asked." "And what do you think?" Mia shrugged. "I think sometimes grown-ups make sad choices." Out of the mouths of babes. "I made one," he admitted, "but I'm here to fix it, if you'll let me." She reached into a small zippered pouch and pulled out a tiny slip of paper. It was a crayon drawing. Stick figures, 3 of them. A girl with braids, a woman with long hair, and a man with a briefcase. They were holding hands. Above them, the sun had a smiling face. "This is us," she said quietly. Bryce's hand trembled as he took it. From behind them, Lauren finally walked over. "She's been drawing that picture for years." Bryce stood slowly. "She's amazing." Lauren crossed her arms. "So why now? Why show up after all this time?" He met her eyes. "Because I didn't know. Your email, that wasn't you. I dug into the metadata. It was sent from my father's server, his assistant's address. Lauren's eyes widened. He lied to both of us. I should have trusted my gut, she muttered. I knew it sounded wrong. I want to make this right, Bryce said. Not with money, with time, with presence, starting here. Mia looked up. Can we make one together? A bracelet? Lauren looked uncertain, but didn't object. Bryce smiled gently. I'd love to. They sat down beside each other, Mia sliding a tray of beads toward him. Pick your colors, she instructed. He chose blue, then green. What does red mean again? Hope. He held it up. Then we definitely need one. Together, bead by bead, they strung something fragile and real. From across the table, Lauren watched them, father and daughter, bent over twine and color, and, for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could become something more. As Bryce tied the bracelet on Mia's wrist, she whispered, You didn't run away this time. No, he said, voice low, not ever again. Sunday afternoon settled like a sigh over Lauren's apartment. The air carried hints of dryer sheets and sunlight through cracked blinds. Mia sat cross-legged on the living room rug, sorting beads into color piles. Bryce sat beside her on a beanbag chair that deflated slowly under his weight. He was still in his weekend clothes, no suit, no tie, just jeans and a t-shirt he hadn't worn in years. Mia held up 2 strands. Should this be green or purple next? Purple, Bryce said. Definitely. You didn't even look. I trust your instincts. She smiled shyly and added the bead. From the kitchen, Lauren watched them, arms folded over her chest. She hadn't spoken much since they returned from the market. When Mia skipped off to grab more elastic cord, Bryce rose and approached her. She's bright, he said quietly. She's everything, Lauren replied, rinsing a coffee mug. I want to be here. Not just for a few weekends, for good. Lauren's hands stilled in the sink. It's not that simple, Bryce. You left, and I raised her, alone. I didn't know. But now you do, he nodded. That's why I want to build something better, a future for her. Lauren turned. You mean buy it? No, he said softly. I mean earn it, with time, with effort, not dollars. She studied him. Then prove it. Bryce returned to the living room just as Mia held up a nearly finished bracelet. This one's for you, she said, voice light. For me? She nodded. I made it to say thank you. He took it carefully. Red bead in the middle, framed by navy blue and gray. What's the red for again? He asked. Hope, she said, grinning. Same as always. That night, Bryce sat alone in his penthouse, the bracelet on his wrist, tight but perfect. He walked to the glass window, looking out at the glittering city. 1,000 things waited on his desk. Documents, proposals, the upcoming Westbridge merger. But all he saw was her face. Mia. The next morning, Bryce walked into Kane Financial with new purpose. He moved past the boardroom, past the glass elevator, straight to his office. Cancel the meeting with Westbridge, he told his assistant. Her eyes widened. Sir, that's a $1.2 billion deal. Reschedule, or pass it on. I have something more important. He closed the door and sat at his desk, pulling out a legal pad. Title, Project Red Bead Underneath, he wrote. Jewelry program for kids. Shelter-based. Partner with local artisans. Include mentorship, income share model, confidence building. He circled the words shelter and confidence. His phone buzzed. It was his father. Again. He let it ring. Then he scrolled through old archives, emails, admin logs from 10 years ago. The breakup message from Lauren. Forwarded. Not written. Metadata showed creation at 3:42 a.m. from Harold's assistant's terminal. His heart pounded. There it was, the fracture. He grabbed his keys. By noon, Bryce stood outside the country club where Harold Kane played racquetball every Monday. Inside, he found him. Harold, gray hair slicked back, crisp white polo shirt, smirking mid-conversation with a state senator. "Bryce," Harold said, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I need 5 minutes," Bryce said, his tone flat. "Of course," Harold replied, waving off the senator. "Walk with me." They moved through the quiet hallway toward the back patio. Bryce pulled out the printed email. "You remember this?" he asked. Harold barely glanced at it. "Vaguely." "You should. You sent it." There was a pause. "I did what was best for you," Harold said smoothly. "That girl would have anchored your future to a different world." "She was my future," Bryce growled. "And that girl is raising my daughter alone." Harold's face stiffened. "You're welcome. You built an empire without the weight." Bryce stepped closer. "No, I built a cage, and I'm done living in it." Without waiting for a reply, Bryce turned and walked out. The bracelet on his wrist caught the sunlight, red bead glinting like a promise. The next few days moved in quiet waves. Bryce kept showing up, early mornings, afternoons, even on his lunch breaks. He'd drive to the shelter, park across the street, and walk in with 2 cups of cocoa, one always for Mia. She began to expect him. "Did you bring the tiger beads?" she asked on Wednesday, her eyes wide with hope. Bryce pulled a small bag from his pocket, orange and black stripes. "Only the best." They sat, side by side, cross-legged on the rug, threading beads in companionable silence. Every few minutes, Mia would glance at him, like checking if he was real. "You're not going to disappear, are you?" she asked, not looking up. The question landed like a stone. "No," Bryce said softly. "I've missed too much already." She nodded and went back to her bracelet. This one had green at the ends and the same red bead in the center. Lauren arrived later than usual. She paused in the doorway, watching them. Bryce looked up and met her gaze. She said nothing, but her eyes held a flicker of something softer than before. The next morning, Bryce stepped into the shelter office, his suit jacket folded over one arm. "I want to set something up," he said. "A real bracelet workshop for the kids." Margaret, the shelter director, looked up from her files. "We've always wanted that, but we've never had the budget or staff." "I'll fund it," Bryce said. "Materials, instructors, space." Margaret studied him. "What's this about?" He reached into his pocket, pulled out the bracelet Mia gave him. "It's about redemption and starting over." Margaret leaned back in her chair. "You're serious? As a heart attack?" The plan came together faster than anyone expected. By Friday, Bryce had converted an old storage room into a temporary studio. Bright bins of beads, rows of chairs, and work tables freshly painted. Lauren stepped in that evening, stunned by the transformation. "You really did this?" she asked, eyes scanning the space. "With Mia's help," Bryce said. "She picked the colors." Mia rushed in, holding a new bracelet. "Look what I made, Dad." Lauren stiffened. Bryce knelt. "Wow, that's amazing. Can I wear it?" She slid it onto his wrist. This one was all reds, dark, light, and one deep ruby at the center. "What's this red mean?" he asked. "It's not just hope anymore," Mia whispered. "It's trust." Lauren turned away, swallowing hard. Later, after the kids left and the shelter quieted, Bryce found Lauren sitting alone in the corner of the studio. "I didn't ask her to call me that," he said gently. "She just did." Lauren nodded. "She's been waiting. She never said it out loud before, not once." "I don't want to take her from you," Bryce said. "I just want to share this life with her, with you." She looked at him, her face tired but open. "You skipped $1 billion merger this week." I had better things to do." A silence fell between them, full of memories. Lauren finally spoke. "You were never cold, Bryce. Just pulled in too many directions. And now I know which one matters." She didn't say yes, but she didn't walk away either. That night, as Bryce drove home, the red bracelet caught the light from a passing street lamp. He touched it gently. For the first time in years, he didn't feel hollow. He felt tethered to something small and warm and real. The following Monday, Bryce stood in his office staring at a photo, one he hadn't looked at in years. Lauren in a sun hat, laughing on a beach. He remembered the moment. She had just told him she was late. He thought it meant dinner, but she had meant the baby. And then everything changed. He dropped the frame into a drawer, shut it. His phone rang. It was Harold. Again. This time, Bryce answered. "We need to talk. Not at the club. Come to my office, now." 2 hours later, Harold walked into Kane Financial like he still owned the air. Crisp blazer, smile that never reached his eyes. "You look tense," he said. Bryce folded his arms. "Why'd you do it?" Harold didn't flinch. "Because I knew you'd throw your life away. That girl, she was a distraction. She was the best thing that ever happened to me. You were 29, Bryce. You had just landed your first fund, and you were about to hand it all away, for a family, for diapers and daycare. I would have figured it out. No, you wouldn't. You were soft then. I made sure you got steel in your spine." Bryce stepped closer. "You lied to me. You erased a daughter from my life." Harold's smile faded. "I protected your future." Bryce held up the bracelet on his wrist. She made this. Red means hope. And somehow, she still had some left, for me. Harold scoffed. "What are you now? A hobby dad?" "I'm a father. Something you never knew how to be." The silence cracked like a glass under pressure. Then Harold straightened his collar. "You're making a mistake, Bryce. You're throwing everything away for sentiment." "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing what matters." As Harold walked out, Bryce sat down and opened his laptop. He pulled up his schedule, cleared 3 weeks. Then he opened a new document. Custody Inquiry, State of Texas. He wasn't here to challenge Lauren, but he wanted something binding. A place in Mia's life, not just in heart, but on paper. Later that night, Bryce sat across from Lauren in her small kitchen. He told her everything. The confrontation, the plan, the paperwork. Lauren listened without speaking, her fingers resting on her coffee mug. "You're not trying to take her from me?" she asked. "Never," he said. "But I want something real. I want to be her dad in every way." Lauren looked down. "You know she still sleeps with the first bracelet she ever made?" He smiled gently. "Let me help her make the next one." A long silence passed. Then Lauren slid a folder across the table. "Her school records, her doctor, her schedule. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." Bryce blinked. "This means—" "It means," she said, eyes shining, "you have a chance to show up every day." Saturday came fast. The shelter's workshop buzzed with kids, volunteers, and bright trays of beads. Mia stood at the front of the room, a paper in her hand. Today's theme is, "What colors feel like family?" Bryce knelt beside her. "What do you think those colors are?" She thought. "Blue for calm, yellow for warm, and red," he smiled, "for hope." They worked together, threading beads side by side. She tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, look." She held up a new bracelet, half hers, half his. Beads alternated in perfect symmetry. "It's for both of us," she said, "so we don't forget." Bryce took it in his hands, heart full. "I'll never forget." And as they tied the last knot together, red thread tucked tight inside the clasp, something unspoken passed between them. Not just a bracelet. A bond. Unbreakable. Mia tugged Bryce's sleeve as they left the shelter workshop that afternoon. Her small hand was sticky from the juice box, her eyes bright beneath the Texas sun. "Can we go to the bead store? The one with the rainbow sign?" Bryce smiled. "You mean Craft Cove?" She nodded, then added quickly, "They have shimmer beads. I've never used shimmer beads." Bryce glanced toward Lauren, who was locking her car. "What do you think? You too busy?" Lauren hesitated. "We were supposed to pick up groceries." Bryce shrugged. "Groceries can wait a little, right? For shimmer beads?" Mia jumped in place, then looked to her mom for the final say. Lauren sighed, softening. "Half an hour." Inside the store, shelves towered with color. Spools, charms, beads of every kind. Mia walked the aisles like it was a palace. She kept looking back to make sure Bryce was still following her. He was. Every step. They ended up at a small tray of heart-shaped beads. Mia picked one up and held it toward him. "This one's for Mom," she whispered. "She never buys beads for herself." Bryce knelt beside her. "Then let's get it. And anything else you want her to have." Back at Lauren's apartment, the three sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by plastic trays and crinkled receipts. Bryce started stringing clumsily, hands stiff. Mia watched him fumble with the elastic. "You're doing it backward," she said, giggling. "Here, let me." She scooted her chair closer and guided his fingers, looping beads in order. "See?" she said. "Now it won't break." Bryce looked at her. "You always know how to fix things, huh?" She smiled. "Mom says if it breaks, you just try again. Stronger thread." Lauren's hands paused over her mug. That line. It was hers. She glanced up at Bryce, eyes softer now. He cleared his throat. "I've been working on something." She raised a brow. "What now?" "A partnership. Not business, real life, for Mia. I want to fund a full workshop program. Not just one room, a whole building, for crafts, learning, community." Lauren blinked. "You're serious?" "As a second chance." She was quiet for a long beat. "This isn't about guilt?" "No," Bryce said. "It's about building something with my daughter and the people who raised her right." He reached into his coat and slid a folder across the table. "I also asked my lawyer to draw up a parenting agreement. I'm not asking for custody, I'm asking for presence." Lauren opened it, skimmed a few pages, then closed it gently. Mia looked up. "Are you guys fighting?" "No, sweet pea," Lauren said. "We're just making sure we don't mess things up again." Bryce turned to Mia. "Would you want me to pick you up from school sometimes? Help with homework?" Her face lit up. "Even math?" "Even fractions," he laughed. Mia reached into her bead tray and pulled out a square charm with a tree etched in gold. She handed it to him. "This one's for beginnings," she said. "My teacher says roots grow when you stay." Bryce turned the charm in his palm, eyes wet. "Then I'm not going anywhere." That night, Bryce sat in his penthouse, lights dim, bracelet still on his wrist. But now, he had something new in his pocket, a square charm shaped like a tree. He placed it on his nightstand. The roots were starting to take hold. The next morning, Bryce arrived at Kane Financial with a different fire in his chest. Not for deals, for truth. He stepped into his father's private boardroom unannounced. Harold sat at the head of the long oak table, reading a printed investor memo like it was gospel. "You're early," Harold said without looking up. Bryce tossed a flash drive onto the polished table. "Plug it in." Harold raised an eyebrow. "What is this?" "Proof. The email you said Lauren wrote 10 years ago? The breakup that ended everything?" Harold leaned back. "I don't see how this—" "I pulled the server logs. The timestamp, IP addresses. The email came from your assistant's desktop, not hers." Harold's jaw tightened. "You've been digging into ancient history." It's not history to me, Bryce snapped. That message erased a family I didn't know I had. You didn't just lie, you stole time. My daughter's first words, her first steps, her first day of school. Harold stood. I did what any decent father would have done. I protected your future. You destroyed it, Bryce said, voice low but fierce. And now I have to explain to my daughter why I wasn't there. Silence filled the room like static. Then Bryce leaned forward. She gave me a charm, a tree, said it means beginnings, but it also means roots, which means everything you tried to sever, I'm rebuilding. Harold crossed his arms. So, what now? You want a public apology? A press release? No, Bryce said, straightening his cuffs. I want distance. You stay out of my life, out of Mia's. We're building something real, without you. He turned and walked out, heart pounding, the bracelet on his wrist clinking softly as he moved. That afternoon, Bryce stopped by the shelter to check on the studio. The new lighting had just been installed and 2 local artists were helping kids design bracelet templates. The room buzzed with color and laughter. Mia saw him first. Dad! Come see what we made! He rushed over, grinning. What is it? She held up a frame. Inside was a collage of all the kids' first bracelets, each labeled with their name. In the center, written in glitter glue, were the words, "We create together." Bryce blinked. That's beautiful. Mia pointed to one with red, orange, and silver beads. That one's mine. Red for hope, orange for bravery, and silver for truth. Truth, huh? She nodded. You said we don't hide anymore. Bryce knelt. You remembered. Lauren walked in carrying snacks and paused when she saw them. Bryce stood to greet her. I told him, he said softly. Harold. Everything. About the email. About Mia. Her expression tensed. And? He didn't deny it, just defended it, called it protection. Lauren shook her head. He never saw people, just strategy. Bryce looked over at Mia, who was now helping another child string beads. She sees people, every day, with more heart than he ever had. Lauren leaned against the wall. You handled it? Yeah, he said. I cut the cord. They stood in silence, watching Mia laugh. Then Lauren whispered, She's going to need a story one day, the truth, about why you weren't there. Bryce nodded slowly. When she's ready, I'll tell her. All of it. No lies. Later that evening, as Bryce walked Lauren and Mia to their car, the sun dipped behind the rooftops, casting golden light over the shelter lot. Mia reached into her bag and pulled out a new bracelet. She slipped it onto Bryce's wrist without a word. He looked down, red, silver, and 1 gold bead in the center. What's the gold mean? He asked. Mia smiled up at him. Gold is for forgiveness. His breath caught. She took his hand and, for the first time since that moment in the shelter, the first time she'd ever called him Daddy, Bryce Kane didn't feel like he was making up for lost time. He felt like he'd finally arrived. Saturday morning, the lot next to the shelter buzzed with activity. Folding tables lined the space, each draped in color. Kids moved between them, stringing beads, painting signs, laughing as music played from a Bluetooth speaker. Bryce stood at the edge, sleeves rolled up, holding a clipboard. His navy polo was smudged with glitter. For once, he wasn't the CEO of anything. Just Mia's dad. Dad, come here. Mia waved him over from the center table. He jogged over. What's up? I saved us 2 seats. We're making the workshop sign. Lauren sat on one side holding a paintbrush dipped in sky blue. She insisted it had to be done as a team. Bryce picked up a stencil. Yes, ma'am. What's the name? Mia grinned. Red Thread Studio. Lauren blinked. That's perfect. Bryce nodded slowly. Yeah, it really is. As they painted, kids wandered by to ask questions. Where to find elastic cord, what colors matched gold, how to tie a secure knot. Mia handled most of it, proud and composed. "She's got a real sense of leadership," Lauren said, watching her. "She gets that from you," Bryce replied. Lauren glanced at him. "No, that confidence, that's all you." The sign finished. Bryce stepped back and admired the words written in red and silver. Red Thread Studio, made with hope. An hour later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony began. Margaret, the shelter director, gave a short speech. "Thanks to Bryce Kane's vision and Mia's determination, this program isn't just about bracelets. It's about giving every child here the power to create something meaningful." The crowd applauded. Mia blushed. Bryce placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and proud. "Ready?" he whispered. Mia took the scissors and cut the red ribbon, her bracelet jangling on her wrist. The workshop officially opened. Inside, it was buzzing. Shelves held trays of beads. Posters showed patterns. A chalkboard listed themes for the week: kindness colors, family day, strengthen strings. Kids sat in clusters, heads bent, weaving ideas into jewelry. Mia walked him over to a table with blank trays. "These are for kids who don't know what they want to make yet." Bryce crouched down. "That was your idea?" She nodded. "Sometimes you don't know your story till you see the colors." He smiled. "That's wiser than half the boardrooms I've ever been in." Lauren appeared beside them, holding a clipboard of registrations. "We're already at capacity for week 1. "I'll call the contractor," Bryce said. "We'll expand." She tilted her head. "Just like that?" "For them," he said. "Always." Later that afternoon, the three of them sat outside the workshop, watching the kids weave, laugh, and swap stories. Mia leaned her head on Bryce's shoulder. "You didn't go to work today." He wrapped his arm around her. "I did work. I worked here." She smiled up at him. "Best job ever." Bryce pulled a small box from his pocket. "I was saving this for when the studio opened." He handed it to Mia. She opened the lid slowly. Inside was a silver bracelet. Not factory-made. Handmade. By him. It was lopsided. A little too tight. But the beads were perfect. Red. Silver. And in the middle, one gold heart. She gasped. "You made this?" He nodded. "Took me a week. I broke the first 3. She hugged him, tight. "I love it." Lauren watched them, tears forming. Bryce met her gaze. "This isn't just a workshop. It's our beginning." She stepped closer, placing her hand on his. "Then let's make it last." And, under the fading sunlight, as kids giggled behind them and bracelets shimmered across tables, the red thread ran stronger than ever, binding what was broken into something whole. The following Thursday, the air inside Red Thread Studio smelled like lavender glue and fresh string. Laughter echoed from corner to corner, and paintbrushes tapped rhythmically on plastic cups. Bryce sat with Mia near the window, the afternoon light washing across their workspace. She was threading clear beads between silver stars. He was still struggling to knot the ends without breaking them. "You twist too hard," Mia said, grinning. "Beads aren't scared. You don't have to fight them." He laughed. "I think I'm more scared than they are." She leaned close. "Want me to help?" He held out the strand like a student offering homework. "Please." Lauren arrived with a small paper bag and a smile that felt more like home than surprise now. "Brought your favorite," she said to Bryce, setting it on the table. "Turkey pesto?" he asked. "With the pickle chips," she added. He blinked. "You remembered?" Lauren sat down beside him, unwrapping her own sandwich. "It's not the kind of thing you forget, like how you always used to take the crust off mine without asking." Mia giggled. "You, crusts!" They all laughed together, an unfamiliar, easy kind of laughter. After lunch, Mia dug through her supply box. "Close your eyes," she said, to both of them. Bryce peeked. "No hints?" "Nope," she said, tightening her ponytail. "It's a surprise." A few minutes passed, beads clicking, string sliding, scissors snipping. Then, "Okay, you can look." She held up 2 bracelets. one for each of them. Lauren's had small rose charms threaded between gold and green beads. "This one's for being strong when things got lonely," Mia said softly. Lauren looked down, tears welling. "It's beautiful." Bryce's bracelet was red, silver, and sky blue. "This one's for being brave enough to come back." He swallowed hard. "Thank you, Mia." But she wasn't done. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a tiny card. On it was a drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands under a string of stars. On each wrist, a bracelet. "This is us," she whispered. "Together." Bryce took the card like it was a treasure. "You kept drawing this even before I came back, didn't you?" She nodded. "I always hoped." Lauren leaned in, brushing Mia's braid off her shoulder. "And now?" Mia smiled wide. "Now I don't have to imagine it." Bryce met Lauren's gaze. "This, what we're building, it's more than I ever thought I'd have again." Lauren hesitated, then quietly, "Maybe that's what makes it worth protecting." That evening, the studio emptied one child at a time. Parents came, hand in hand, backpacks were zipped, and hugs exchanged. As Bryce helped tidy up, he turned to Lauren. "There's something I've been meaning to ask." She raised an eyebrow. "You're not proposing a merger, are you?" He chuckled. "No contracts today. Just this. Would you two come to my place for dinner tomorrow? My place? No suits? Just food, music, a view." Lauren looked at Mia, who was already nodding. "Please, Mom," Mia asked. "We could bring dessert." Lauren gave a slow, quiet smile. "Okay, but only if you don't overcook the pasta this time." Bryce laughed. "Deal. I'll even let Mia stir the sauce." As the sun dipped beyond the buildings, painting the studio walls orange and gold, Bryce slipped the new bracelet onto his wrist beside the others. Each bead was a marker of failure, forgiveness, and finally, a future. And now, it was beginning to shine. Friday night arrived with a calm that felt earned. Bryce stood in his downtown condo, apron tied awkwardly over his dress shirt, stirring a pot of marinara with exaggerated focus. "You're stirring like you're closing a deal," Lauren teased, stepping into the kitchen with Mia trailing behind her, holding a foil-covered tray. "It is a deal," Bryce replied. "A very delicate one involving garlic bread." Mia giggled and slid the tray onto the counter. "I made cupcakes, with extra sprinkles." He knelt beside her. "That's a big contribution to the merger." "Only if I get a raise," she said, grinning. "One more bedtime story this weekend." "Approved," Bryce smiled, with a bonus hug. The evening unfolded in soft colors. Pasta on real plates, music from an old speaker, laughter echoing through marble floors once too quiet. Bryce caught himself watching them. Mia stacking napkins into a tower, Lauren humming as she lit candles. Later, after dishes were rinsed and dessert plates scraped clean, Mia rummaged through her bag and pulled out a velvet pouch. "I have something," she said, voice suddenly shy. They watched as she spilled the contents onto the coffee table, beads, string, and one familiar silver heart. "I want us to make one together," she said. "All 3. Bryce and Lauren looked at each other, then slowly sat down beside her. "What colors?" Lauren asked, already sorting through the pile. Mia's fingers moved with purpose. "Red, for hope. Silver for truth. Blue for calm. And this—" She held up a tiny bronze ring with etched lines across it. Bryce blinked. "What's that?" "It's from my first bracelet. The one I gave you. I saved the middle." His throat tightened. "Why?" "So we remember where we started," she said, stringing it between the other beads. They worked in silence, each person threading, tying, watching the pattern take shape. At the end, Lauren tied the final knot. Mia handed it to Bryce. "This one's yours," she said, "but we all made it." He slipped it on slowly. The beads felt light but carried weight, the kind built from second chances. "It's the most important one I've ever worn," he whispered. Outside, the city lights sparkled, but Bryce didn't glance toward them once. His whole world was inside now. Later, after Mia had fallen asleep on the couch with a cupcake still in her hand, Bryce tucked a blanket over her. Lauren stepped beside him. "She's never made one that personal," she said. "She gave me her beginning," Bryce murmured. Lauren nodded. "And you gave her the future." They stood in quiet, watching Mia breathe peacefully. "Do you regret it?" Bryce asked softly. "Letting me in?" Lauren didn't answer right away. Then, "No, I regret the years we lost, but not this." He turned to her, voice careful. "I know it's still fragile, but I'd like to try. Not just as a father, as us." Lauren met his eyes. "We start slow, but yes, we try." And there it was, not a declaration, but a promise. In the center of the living room, the bracelet sat on the table. Red, silver, blue, and one worn bronze bead from a life once fractured. Now threaded, now whole. It was early Saturday morning when Bryce found himself standing once again outside his father's estate, the house where he'd grown up learning silence instead of comfort, ambition instead of love. He wasn't here for business. He was here for truth. Harold opened the door in a tailored robe, surprised but unsurprised. "Didn't think you'd come back." "I'm not here for you," Bryce said. "I'm here for her." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and handed it to his father. Harold scoffed. "What is this, a parting gift?" "Open it." Inside lay a bracelet, Mia's latest creation. Red, silver, one black bead in the middle. "She said the black one means truth that hurts," Bryce said, his voice steady. "She wanted me to give it to you." Harold stared at the bracelet. For once, no smirk. "Kids, don't forget who didn't show up," Bryce said. "And she knows now. Everything. The email, the lie, what you took from her." Harold sat slowly, suddenly smaller. "I did what I thought was right." "No," Bryce replied. "You did what served you. And now, you don't get to pretend you didn't change the course of our lives." Harold's voice cracked. She's smart, then. Brave." "She's everything you taught me not to be," Bryce said, "and I thank God for it." There was nothing more to say. Bryce walked out, the door clicking shut behind him like the final chapter in a long, cold book. Back at the shelter, Mia was setting up for the weekend market, a new event Bryce helped organize. Booths were lined with crafts, jewelry, and woven goods from kids and local artists. The red thread banner fluttered in the warm breeze. Lauren handed him a coffee. "You okay?" "I told him," Bryce said. "Everything." She studied his face. "And?" "He heard it," Bryce replied. "For once, but whether it matters to him, that's his choice now." Mia ran up holding a clipboard. "We have a waiting list for bracelets. Can I put more signs near the entrance?" Bryce smiled. "Let's do it together." They moved through the crowd, posting signs, welcoming families, explaining bead colors. One little boy asked Bryce if he could be like the bracelet guy when he grew up. Bryce chuckled. "You'll be even better." Then Mia tugged at his sleeve. "I saved one bracelet for you." He knelt beside her. "This one's for today," she said. "The hard truth kind." She placed it on his wrist. Red, silver, and one gold bead with a crack running through it. "What's the crack mean?" he asked gently. Mia whispered, "It means even broken things can shine again." He pulled her into a hug, pressing his cheek to her hair. "You shine, kiddo. You always will." Behind them, Lauren smiled through tears. She picked up a spare tray, sat at a booth, and began helping a new group of children. Bryce looked around, not at numbers or investors, but at faces. Joyful, busy, inspired. And in that moment, he knew this was legacy. Not stocks, not steel towers, but stories, threads, love handed down bead by bead. He turned back to Mia. "Let's make one more." Together, they threaded colors that held their journey. Black for truth, gold for grace, red for resilience. And as the crowd swelled around them and the day bloomed with promise, their hands moved in rhythm, father and daughter weaving through the past into something whole, something real. The week after the market, Bryce called a meeting, not with board members or shareholders, but with city officials and nonprofit partners. The agenda was clear: expanding Red Thread into a full-time creative hub for underserved kids. "It won't just be bracelets," Bryce explained. "We're building a place for stories, through color, through craft, through community." The city councilwoman leaned forward. "Are you proposing a youth art center?" "I'm proposing a launch pad," Bryce said, his voice steady, "for kids who don't get handed opportunity." He left that meeting with a signed lease, an old library on the east side, forgotten but still standing, brick walls, arched windows, and sunlight that poured across the dusty floors like memory waiting to be rewritten. Over the next month, Bryce split his days between the finance tower and the build site. On weekends, he and Mia sketched layout ideas on napkins while Lauren brought lemonade and reminded them of fire codes. One afternoon, Mia showed up with a drawing, a big red building with a string of beads across the front door. At the bottom, she'd written, "Hope lives here." Bryce pinned it to the new studio's corkboard. "We're keeping that forever." Opening day came fast. The old library had transformed. Walls painted soft yellow, shelves filled with bins of beads, yarn, and tiny tools. The main room had a circle of tables where kids could sit, swap stories, and create. Bryce stepped outside to see a crowd already forming. Volunteers in red thread shirts guided parents to seats. Local musicians tuned guitars. A muralist finished the last strokes of a huge design, 3 hands weaving a bracelet across generations. Lauren joined him by the entrance. "You nervous?" He smiled. "Not even close. I've never been more certain." She handed him a small gift box. "From Mia. She made it this morning." Inside was a bracelet made entirely of different kids' contributions, each bead chosen by a child who'd come through the shelter. In the middle, 1 gold bead with a white swirl. He looked up. "What's the swirl?" Lauren smiled. "Mia said it means all of us together." Then Margaret from the shelter tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Red Thread Creative Hub." Applause. Cheers. And then the doors opened. Kids rushed in first, racing toward their favorite stations. Parents followed, some teary-eyed. Bryce stood at the center, overwhelmed. Not by chaos, but by the sound of life blooming in every corner. A boy tugged his sleeve. "Are you the bracelet guy?" Bryce knelt. "I am. Can you help me make one for my mom? She's sad sometimes." Bryce placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I'd be honored." By mid-afternoon, the studio buzzed like a heartbeat. Lauren ran the welcome desk, Mia gave bead-matching tips to younger kids, and Bryce sat with a circle of boys learning how to braid leather. This wasn't a shelter pop-up anymore. It was a home. Later that night, as they locked up, Mia twirled under the fairy light still glowing across the entrance. "I want to live here," she said. Bryce chuckled. "Me too." Lauren leaned against the doorway. "You know this will grow, right? Schools will call, maybe other cities." He nodded. "Let them. We'll show them what happens when kids believe in themselves." Then he looked around one last time. Walls still echoing with the day's laughter, tables scattered with thread and dreams. And he knew. Legacy wasn't something you left behind. It was something you built, one bead, one hand, one story at a time. A month after the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Red Thread hosted its first official market at the city plaza. Booths stretched across the square like a quilt of creativity. Beads, woven bookmarks, painted cards, tiny clay sculptures. Each table had a child's name. Each item held a story. Bryce stood behind Mia's booth, arranging bracelets beside her sketchbook. "Dad," she said, threading her fingers through a new spool of ribbon, "do you think people will like the purple ones?" He knelt beside her. "They'll love them, especially the ones with gold stars." She grinned. "That's the hope ones, for when people feel stuck." Across the plaza, Lauren handed out flyers, her hair pulled into a loose braid. Her eyes scanned the crowd, not for trouble, but to make sure everything felt right. And it did. The sun filtered through red and white canopies. Musicians strummed acoustic tunes. Parents knelt beside children, choosing beads for custom pieces. Smells of fresh popcorn and lemonade drifted on the breeze. Midway through the afternoon, a little girl approached Mia's booth holding a crumpled dollar. "Do you have one that says, 'Brave'?" she asked quietly. Mia nodded, reaching for a pink and teal bracelet with a bronze bead in the middle. "This one. I made it when I was scared." The girl's mom looked up at Bryce. "Is this your daughter?" He smiled. "Yes. She teaches me more than I teach her." A few booths down, Lauren waved him over. "We're running low on string. Think you could make a supply run?" Bryce took the list with a mock salute. "Only if I get a snack, too." "You'll get a kiss if you hurry," she smirked. He laughed and jogged toward the supply tent. By evening, the plaza glowed with lanterns, and a small stage had been cleared for final announcements. Mia stood nervously at the mic, clutching a paper. "Hi," she began, voice soft but steady. "My name's Mia. I'm 8. I used to live in the shelter. I made bracelets to feel less alone." She paused, looking at Bryce and Lauren in the front row. "But then I met my dad, and now we make things together. Not just bracelets, but a place for kids like me." She lifted her wrist. "This bracelet is for change, for second chances, for family." The crowd clapped, some wiping away tears. Bryce and Lauren walked up behind her. Together, the three of them knelt at the center of the stage, lifting a tray of beads. Each person in the audience was invited to thread one onto a string. By nightfall, the string reached across the plaza, hundreds of beads, each one holding a wish, a memory, a silent promise. Later, back at the booth, Mia curled beside Bryce on a blanket as the crowd dispersed. "You think we'll do this again?" she asked sleepily. He kissed the top of her head. "Every year." Lauren joined them, wrapping an arm around both. "We started with a string and a name," she whispered. Bryce looked at the long cord of beads now coiled like a river on the table. "And now we have a legacy." As the lanterns flickered out and the stars blinked awake, the three of them, Bryce, Lauren, and Mia, sat beneath the banner that read Red Thread Market. In front of them, a bracelet. Not just of beads, but of trust and truth and the love that stitched it all together.